You are listening to the Level Up Your Gaming Podcast, episode 133, The Rule of Cool. In today's episode, we talk about the Rule of Cool. We discuss how the Rule of Cool is applied in a game you are running. We also discuss how the rule can quickly spin out of control and how to manage it. If you'd like to participate in the discussion or leave us feedback, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. If you like the content and want to hear more of the show, subscribing will ensure you don't miss an episode. New episodes come out almost every Wednesday. Also, please review, tell a friend about the podcast, or share with your gaming group. Now sit back and enjoy the episode. Welcome into Level Up Your Gaming Podcast. My name is Aaron, and joining me virtually once again, I've got Josh. How you doing today, Josh?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. So Josh was so kind to point out in the last episode that he set the plate for me so well, and I totally just whiffed. I struck out. He set up a great one-liner to bring me into the podcast, and I missed it. So Josh, I gotta tell you, I'm sorry for missing it. I was just like, fuck you, Josh. We aren't doing that today.
A little bit of back and forth. This playing off each other, giving each other the opportunities for one-liners, and really, highlighting what it is to be in this sort of environment to make each other feel better. Sometimes you just got to give it to them.
Huh. Interesting. I think that maybe you're alluding to our subject here. You talk about the rule of cool?
I might be talking about the rule of cool.
So yeah, that is our subject here. Josh set it up for me this time. I listened though.
It was a little more subtle the last time. I was
a little more subtle. Josh just like blah 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 blah. I'm like, okay, time for me to talk. All right, boop, boop, boop. This time we made it. He spelled it out for me a little bit better. He also had a big flashing sign, but you can't see him. So mention rule of cool.
Signs are cool now.
Oh yeah. So the rule of cool. All right. If anyone's listening and they don't know what this is, the concept behind it is it's sort of a general house rule around, which is if somebody does something that you think is cool or fits the story or helps move the story along, let them have it. Okay, let them do it. That's basically, the long and the short. Too long, didn't read. Sorry, I'm not really good at holding back the whole thing here, but that is the rule of cool. Now, there's so many different ways that you can enact the rule of cool. There's so many gradations to how you use it. That it's not just that simple. It's not just like your player's like, I'm going to go flip over this truck and then, throw up a bunch of doves and then the doves are going to blind my opponent while I shoot him 14 times. Like, that sounds really cool, but, you probably don't want to just let your players just come up with a bunch of crazy shit because they'll start doing that.
Oh, absolutely. If you give your players carte blanche to go crazy in the game, they are absolutely going to do it. And then at some point that reduces their enjoyment of, playing the game. You sort of need to be held back a little bit. There's a concept I had about art was that if you take a look at movies, the first 3 Star Wars, A New Hope, it was made on a shoestring budget, guy's out in the desert, shoots as much as he can, gets edited down to an actual decent movie. Well, then they go back and they make a Phantom Menace, and he's just let loose to do whatever he wants, all the money in the world, and I don't know, Phantom Menace wasn't the greatest.
What are you talking about? It's the best of all 9 movies.
Try spinning. That's effective. But I mean, the concept is that if you hold your players back sometimes, use rules as written, or raw, you might hear that sometimes. Rules is written to, set the pace for how the game is supposed to be. And yes, a rule of cool is useful in that moment, but it needs to be established as this is because you've asked, this is because the scene, this sounds awesome. Don't just let a player do whatever they want, obviously. Keep it within bounds. And I think this also goes back to when we're talking about improving your game with improv. If they ask for something, say yes, but add to it.
Put more around it. Don't just say, yes, it worked. Great. Have at it. You said that you have a love-hate relationship with this.
Yeah.
Why? Why is that?
Because there are, if you don't establish clear boundaries on this, it becomes very difficult for your players to understand what is rule of cool and what is rules as written. Especially for new players. If you've got players that aren't familiar with the actual game mechanics, sometimes they'll ask for something not knowing that they can't do it. And you can't just, say yes to everything, because if they're asking, does the game allow me to do this thing? You have to establish a boundary like, no, normally the game doesn't, but in this case, because it would be cool. But then that can also lead into the like, oh, you're just letting me do a thing. I couldn't actually do this. My character can't actually do this. You're just letting me do it because, I don't know, because the fight's going badly, or because I brought the good beer this evening or something. So yeah, I do have sort of a love-hate relationship with it, because I think the rule of cool is a great tool. Rhyming now. To give players sort of inspiration to sort of improv some of the things that can happen, give new life to some bits of story or scenes that, if you're just rolling dice, you're just slapping each other with swords all day, that gets really boring. But, you come up with an idea, like, I want to do this cool thing. Can I do this cool thing? And like, give it some, like, say yes, like, go for it, but give it boundaries. You can't just let rule of cool run.
Yeah, I agree with that. The idea of the rule of cool, the concept behind it. You don't want to just give your players the world. I mean, obviously the goal of the game is to get your players to hit the end of it. And there's this balance there, because this fits into the just say yes topic, and the even the stuff that was coming out with the 1D&D and all that. You have to understand when a consequence. You have to be able to recognize when a consequence could take place, and why you shouldn't just allow something to happen because it's cool, and instead, there has to be some chance associated to the action itself. So, like, that's a hard thing for a new GM to do. It's a hard thing for an experienced GM to do. All right, because a lot of experienced GMs will hear a player, and hopefully you like the people who sit at your table, that they're friends with you. But if you don't like somebody at the table, this might become more apparent, because maybe you like 3 of the people you play with, but the other 2 people you're kind of like, meh. Okay, the other 3 people are really good friends of yours, and they say and do a lot of things, and you're like, I love it. I have visions for what I'm going to do with my story now, because you've done this really cool thing, and you're going to give them a lot of stuff. So one thing that you have to avoid with it, and this is why it's difficult for all levels of GM, is that by giving players stuff that's outside the boundaries of the rules as written, is you're effectively showing that perhaps you are expressing favoritism towards other players at your table. And other players notice that. They are keenly aware when one player stands out above the other players or seems to get more favoritism at the table as a whole. Players are super aware of it. You might not be aware of it as the GM. It might be a blind spot that you have. You just can't see it. And most GMs can't see it. But a lot of players are super acutely, keenly aware of that kind of stuff. So when George sits down at your table and he goes out, he's like, in the name of John Woo, and doves fly out, and he flips over the bad guy and breaks his neck. And you're like, yeah, that's awesome. Roll me it. Okay, you got a 13. Yeah, but it's good enough because it's super cool.
Yeah,
Your
by all
other
means.
players see it. It cheapens everything else that the other players are doing. The other players are like, well, I've been engaging this guy for 40 minutes in armed combat.
You only needed that last 13 to kill him.
Yep.
No, I think, this is something that goes on in D&D with fifth ed, at least. They've got the inspiration, and they talk about the DM can hand out inspiration when players do cool things, and you can use the inspiration, blah, 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 blah. I don't think I have played as a player in a game where anybody actually did that, because the DMs that I've seen and I've talked to, and I'll admit I'm one myself, if you are rewarding a player for good place for doing a thing, you have to make sure that everybody sort of understands that's what's going on, and if they emulate that, you have to reward them similarly. Because you are trying to get that sort of behavior out of all of your players. You're trying to push the game to that next level, and allowing the rule of cool to take over can get very dangerous. If you restrict it to specific times or events, that can be more helpful. That's the whole Matt Mercer, how do you want to do this? Yeah, you killed the bad guy. Now you can describe the doves flying out as you slide down the stairs on your knees, cracking its neck. It's really awesome, dude. Good job. But that's not going to happen, halfway through the fight when you're just slapping things with swords. So that's not necessarily the only time you should do it, though, because then it just becomes it sort of it puts the player on the spot, and sometimes your players don't have something loaded up. They don't have anything in the barrel waiting for this is how I'm going to kill this enemy. Sometimes a player sees something in a fight, they've got like a concept. It's why I went back to the yes and. Add your own thing to the rule of cool. Do leave it in those environments. If it's a social situation, if it's a combat situation, say yes, but restrict it and try and make it, I don't want to say rules is written, but work the rules into it.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's such a difficult thing because, again, what are the stakes that are happening in the situation that you're encountering? A good example of this is you're doing a big combat fight. You got a ton of things going on, and your player comes within 1-2 hit points of something that people have been struggling with in the encounter for a long time. Okay, just one harpy is just somehow juking everything that people throw at it, and it's just you're just like, oh my god, and it's fucking up the party. At that point when the player rolls their damage, they can't see behind the screen. You couldn't be like, okay, this is you finally get a good hit on it, and you're like, yeah, that's good. Yeah, that does it. You kind of sort of wave your hand there. That's really where you kind of let the rule of cool, where I would say kind of, implement it, because it's better to let something, the motivation of one player succeeding in something can sometimes brighten up the mood at the table as well. and sway the whole combat in a different direction. So in that kind of case there, the rule of cool, which isn't really even that's just very basic, but maybe your player's just like, I've had enough of this and I'm going to do this sweeping wind up thing, and they roll a crit and they hit, because you're not going to let them just do it and it succeeds, but it's enough to maybe sway the table and flip the motivations of people. Now everybody's kind of describing their actions or something like that, and things kind of move the combat in a different direction. You sort of morale is lifted up at the table because you've let something go in a direction, and you've let somebody finish off an enemy that was pestering the entire group the whole way through, and now players are back into it. So that's where kind of the rule of cool can be utilized, and also like get motivation at the table, like that camaraderie at the table to come back up. The other thing that you can do with the rule of cool on the other side of things is you're doing a very kind of serious combat, and somebody wants to do an action that just doesn't work. And I think this is where Josh's point of, yeah, we're going to let you do the action, but we're going to we're going to improv. We're going to think about how to improvise doing that action right now. Okay, so I'm going to let you roll for it, and this is what you're going to do. Maybe you verbally assault the harpy so bad that it goes home crying. Okay, like, could happen. It kind of doesn't fit the theme of the combat, but you're fucking pissed, or you yell so loud that everybody at the table gets inspiration. You do something that there's benefit to the whole table in a lot of ways in letting an event transpire that can get you to the point of the point of basically becoming where that rule of cool really kind of like helps facilitate and move the table in the right direction. You talked about the inspiration piece, and I just wanted to hit on that. Don't be afraid to give out a lot of inspiration at the table, and you talked about them as rewards. Go back to the last podcast we just did on rewards. If players act in specific manners, give them out. They're a reward to be given out. And don't be afraid about giving them out. Fuck it. Like, what, you want to hamstring your players, or do you want them to have a good time at the table? Give them the freaking inspiration.
Yeah. No, I agree. It should be more. We're trying to put together a story. We're playing a story together. We're creating this as a group. The DM, your position is there to set the scene, to create the motivation, to set the table and the mood. And then the players are there to come in and sort of fill in, what are the actions? Where does the story go? And the rule of cool is there to allow your players, is for you to allow your players to maybe put something into the story that would be against the rules that are already in place. And having that as an option is nice if it works, and is dangerous if it's expected.
Yes. If it's expected that if I'll go to the combat example there. If one of your players finally says, I'm fucking sick of this, he gives you this best Samuel L. Jackson, I'm fucking sick of this motherfucking harpy in this motherfucking cave. Okay. And he, you're like, that's so epic. And you're like, okay, roll advantage on your attack. Like, okay, yeah. You shouldn't be allowed to, but we're going to let it happen anyways, because this has been, the thorn in their side. What you don't want is everybody who throws out some movie quote to be like, or describe something to be like, I get advantage now too. Like, no, but maybe for the length of this combat, I'll allow it. Okay. Because, this has gone so poorly. Nobody can roll over a 3 tonight, so yeah, maybe I'll let it happen for this combat, and then you kind of let it fade into obscurity, and you go, boy, that was great. And be open with your players. Be like, listen, that's not happening again.
Obviously, communication is key, making sure your players understand what's going on, uh, letting them know that, hey, this, this is not how this, that's against the rules, but I'm
I'll
going
let
to
it
let it
out.
happen this one time. Just, your frustration is understood and noted, and the harpies that you're going against feel demotivated by your anger. But that's, like I said, uh, try and work. Don't just go straight against the rules. Sort of work it into what's going on in the game. Use the game to your advantage. Use the system to your advantage. Um,
It's a feel
because
thing. I
yeah,
mean, you're not don't just throw out the rules because they're not working for you tonight. Okay.
there are games for that. If you want to play that, there are different games for that. Do a one shot where anything goes. It's a lot of fun as a one shot. But if you're doing like any sort of campaign, if it's going to be, repeated sessions, you need to have some sort of boundaries. Otherwise, it stops being fun. It's I remember eons ago, in the dawn of time, playing like the original Diablo or Diablo 2, and you'd get one of those memory uh, editors that could go in and give you, cheat items, right?
Yeah, hero edit your items.
Yeah, hero edit your items. There you go. And I made a bow of whoop ass for my Diablo 1 rogue archer lady, right? And just stupid damage. And I just walked around blasting everything. It was one hit. And within about 10 minutes, I was like, I don't even want to play the game anymore. Because not having boundaries does demotivate some people.
Yes, once you break a game, I mean, you could experience that if you play any RPGs, JRPGs. Once you break a game, there is a limit to how far you go. So, like the power creep, once you hit a certain point, you go, okay, I'm done playing the game, but I kind of want to, like that's the hardest thing that I have when I play a video game is I go, okay, like I'm done doing all the other extra stuff. I'm powerful enough. Let's just finish the damn game and be done with it. And that's what would happen in that situation if you got rid of the boundaries that are there with the rules and you go straight rule of cool. Then the players no longer are restricted by powers. Okay, at that point, like why don't you just tell the players just open up the spell book and just tell me which ones you want to use? Like,
but once again, it is a lot of fun for a one shot because you go into a one shot knowing that, we're playing pure rule of cool. We don't care about any of the rules on this, the stats. You come up with something cool to do, it'll happen. But understand, this also works for me. I am going to be throwing the same thing back at you. It's going to be rainbows and unicorns shooting lasers at each other, and we're all going to be on spaceships by the end of this thing.
no, I've played in a game that was very the hybrid game system that we've talked about on the podcast before. The engine in it, the ETA engine, in the one shot, I felt the game was complete. I mean, it was 80s action heroes. So, I mean, like, the type of game you're playing, okay? And the entire game was built around, I mean, the entire system has a built-in kind of rule of cool thing, which is like you have these things and you just use them because you can go straight up rule of cool. And it was very fun, but also the danger aspect to the game wasn't there. So in a one shot, it was a lot of fun, but like I wouldn't know how to implement that in a long game. And which is the thing here, which is if you're going to have something that lets you go into this sort of cinematic, rule, like you're breaking the rules, you're defying the genre, you're doing whatever you're doing, you have to have a way to show your players that there's a limit to it. Yes, I'm going to allow it this one time, but it's not a consistent thing. Don't expect that if you all go, grab a chicken, you start firing eggs out of it like a rifle. Okay, like don't expect that to be a thing. But maybe there's one time when you let it, even in a long game, you might let something crazy go on, or a player might ask to do something completely outside the bounds of like the normal rules, and you go, okay, well, yeah, okay, we'll do that, and you can. And this goes back to the improv episode, which is, yeah, we'll let you do it. This is the role. I want you to do it, but at the same time, by the way, at the end of this, I'm going to figure this out. This is not going to be like this was this one time. You discovered the power of the Sword of a Thousand Truths this one time. After that, the power is less impressive. You had impressive guts when you wielded this sword the first time. You cannot muster that again.
Down upon you. Yeah. But yeah, build, like, if you're talking about rule of cool in a long-term game, make sure that you put boundaries on it. Make sure that your players understand what's going on, that it's not going to be an every time thing, but don't say no to it. It's motivation to your players to really amp up the story. It just can't be the end all. Anytime they get stuck, they want to try something crazy. You put boundaries on these things, make them, work for it.
The only caveat that I would have to that is that if their actions are designed not to best your situation, but bolster your other players, I would allow it almost indefinitely based upon that. So like that would almost become a house rule in my game, where like if you're like listen, this harpy's been causing us problems. I want to get into a grapple. I don't want to do any damage. So I can give everybody else the advantage as they whoop on this thing, going forward. Or I'm going to throw all my magic into this just to debilitate it. I don't want to do any damage. I just want to stop it. Okay, I want to scare it or whatever it is. Like this, then I want to do this so everybody else can get an advantage strike or something like that. Like that's something that I would be like, it's not breaking the game where I'm doing something to best the situation. It is I am doing something now to help everybody else succeed within the situation itself. And that's almost like I'm giving people inspiration. I'm sacrificing my 10 dice of whoop ass for the ability to give my friends and my other players at the table success within a combat situation or within a social situation, whatever it might be. Kind of playing the that hero's point there. I would let that go almost all day. I mean, like that's I think that's makes for more enjoyable play, because now the players, you're not like guaranteed anything, but you get some fun things out of it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I agree. I'm right there with you, buddy.
Any other thoughts on this, Josh?
No, I think it's just important to set boundaries, but understand that if you want to have a fun game as a one shot, rules out the window can be a lot of fun, but not long term.
Yes, you can do it temporarily, but definitely not. You don't want to make it a permanent fixture in your long-term super serious campaign.
Yeah. Once again, know your players.
Know your players. Yes, indeed. Anyways, so let us know your thoughts on the rule of cool. If you implement anything similar to it within your game, or if you use some sort of modified version of the rule of cool, how you use it in the game. Level Up Your Gaming Podcast at gmail.com or facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. The podcast is also on YouTube, so go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe to it there, notification bell, helps all that, the algorithm, move that thing on up, and review the podcast, subscribe, recommend it to a friend, recommend it in a Facebook group, wherever you've got social media, just recommend it. Yeah, that's going to wrap us up for the week. So for Josh, I'm Aaron. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.